Good morning, Chairman. We are now live.
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning and welcome to this meeting of Adult Care and Public Health Scrutiny Committee. I am Councillor Jimmy Brooks, the Chair of the committee, and sitting to my right is Vice Chair, Councillor Maggie Cullen. In addition to welcoming all members and commit to the committee for this meeting, I would also like to welcome Councillor Steve Clegg, Executive Councillor, Adult Care and Health. Martin Samuels is with us, but he has just popped out, Executive Director and Adult Care for Community Wellbeing. Hayley Eccles, Deputy Director, Adult Social Services, who is attending for her first meeting of the committee. So welcome, Hayley. Before we begin, this is a standard announcement. If we have a fire alarm, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors into the reception and assemble in the car park at the front of the building and await further instructions. The audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being broadcast live via the County Council's website, and all your comments will remain accessible online. Please have mobiles and laptops and iPads on silent mode. The hearing loop is now activated. Requests to speak will be collated at the top table. Please indicate early when you wish to speak. We will now move to the formal agenda. Agenda item 1. Andrew, do we have any apologies or replacement members?
We have received no apologies and no replacement members, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Agenda item 2. Declarations of members' interest. Do we have any members who wish to declare an interest? That is no. Thank you for that. Agenda item 3. Minutes of the meeting of the Adult Care and Public Health Scrutiny Committee held on the 23rd of July. This item is to approve and sign minutes of the last meeting as a correct record. Please turn to page 5 to 10 of the agenda pack. Do we have any amendments or questions? No, thank you very much. Could I have a proposer that they are a true record? Councillor Reeve, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Cullen, thank you very much. We will now do a vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Those minutes are agreed as a correct record. Agenda item 4. Announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Lead Officers. I have no announcements as the Chairman at this time. Thank you. Moving to the Exec Councillor announcements. Are there any announcements from the Councillor Steve Clegg, Executive Councillor for Adult Care and Health?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, if I may, and I promise to be brief for once. I'm pleased to confirm that yesterday this Council's executive voted unanimously to approve recommendations on the integrated lifestyle service, including a thorough consultation process and extending the existing contract by a further 12 months until the end of September 2026. The decision reflects this administration's commitment to ensure every pound of taxpayers' money is spent wisely and cost effectively. The contract extension gives us sufficient time for review and scrutiny. Furthermore, I've instructed officers to ensure that the consultation process obtains views from as many groups as possible, including younger people, families, the frail and the disadvantaged. I'm confident that this approach will help us to deliver even better services that prevent ill health, address inequalities in a targeted and cost-effective manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clegg. I will allow members to ask questions pertinent to the announcements only. Nothing that is relevant to business considered later in the agenda. This should be very brief, and members may not make statements as part of this, so please make your questions brief. Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair, and I will take my right as a scrutineer to make the comment that I wish to make. I just wanted to say my point about the thing that has just been mentioned, that should have come to scrutiny before it went to exec. That was a point that was made. There also ought to have been impact analysis, as there are with item 5 on this agenda, and they weren't present either. What I would say is there was some quite strong criticism of people who want really strong scrutiny. And I'm going to quote your leader: you are the controlling group and you can take actions that you like, but we will hold you to account. So, as Councillor Matthews would say, get used to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Do we have any more questions at all? Councillor Redfern. Councillor Redfern, this is just for the announcement that the executive made. Thank you very much. No worries. Thank you, Councillor Clegg, for that announcement. We have now Martin Samuels, Executive Director of Adult Care and Community Wellbeing. Is there anything to announce at all?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm in a slightly odd position that I was expecting to be able to make an announcement, but I can't. To explain that slightly, members of the committee will be aware that the Care Quality Commission has been running a process of assessment of every local authority in the country for their social care responsibilities. They undertook a pilot assessment of this council 2 years ago, but we were expecting to have our full inspection shortly. And indeed, the Care Quality Commission had announced publicly that they would be informing the last councils, and that was the 5 councils that were the pilots, and therefore including ourselves, on the 1st of September. You'll be aware that that date obviously has passed, and nothing has been heard from the CQC. I've checked with my colleagues in the other 4 authorities, and they similarly have heard nothing, and the CQC has not said anything. So we are in a slightly odd position that publicly the CQC has said they will contact the last 5 authorities 3 days ago and haven't. I have no idea when we will hear. I have no idea if there's been a change of policy by the CQC. I would be very surprised. The position remains that the CQC has said that they intend to do all site visits by the end of December this year. But beyond that, I don't know. So as I had been expecting to be able to announce that we had had the call, but we haven't. And I don't know when we will.
Thank you, Martin. I now invite the members to ask any questions pertinent to the announcement only. Nothing that is relevant to business later in the agenda. This should be brief, and the members may not make statements as part of this. Do we have any questions? Councillor Lee.
It's only a brief one. How does that impact us, Martin? In what way?
Well, if we get the call quite soon, it will just mean we've had a few more days of preparation. So the clock starts from the point where they ring us. They are under a certain degree of time pressure because CQC has said, again, publicly, that they intend the final report from the final inspection to have been published before the end of March. And so, on the basis that it tends to be a sort of 6-month process or so, CQC are starting to run out of time. But so long as they contact us in the next few days, the process simply starts from the point where they contact us. So for us, having a few extra days is quite helpful. I mean, we are largely prepared, so actually it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. If they turned around and said, well, we'll ring you in 2 months' time, actually there is then the risk of slightly going off the boil. So I would actually like to receive the call as soon as possible.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Do we have any more questions about the announcement? No? Thank you very much. I will move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item 5, application of eligibility criteria for adult social care and process for assessment. This item will be found on pages 11 to 16 of the agenda pack. This report summarises the Council's approach to applying eligibility criteria in adult social care and the processes for assessment. The report summarises the statutory requirements for these functions and the approach taken by the Council. The action that would be required is to note and to comment on the information presented in the report. This report will be presented by Martin Samuels, Exec Director of and Hayley Eccles, Deputy Director of Adult Social Care. Would you like to present?
So I'll just say a few words by way of introduction. So a couple of things. The first is really to introduce Hayley to the committee. I am absolutely delighted to have Hayley, having joined the team just recently. I'll leave it to her to sort of explain and introduce herself a little bit in terms of her history. But I think one of the key things is that for some years now, we haven't had a qualified social worker as one of the most senior individuals in the directorate. I mean, I myself, and as members of the committee will know, I'm not a qualified social worker. I've come through the commissioning route. I think that it has been apparent, increasingly apparent, that we haven't had a very senior, experienced social worker in the leadership team of the directorate. So I was very keen to recruit, and I'm very pleased that we've been able to recruit Hayley, who is a very experienced, qualified social worker. So that's part of the sort of introduction to Hayley. The second part is one of the things that I think we often realise is that as individuals, we all have a pretty clear idea of what we think the NHS does. The NHS features on lots of TV programmes, and of course all of us through our lives have regular contact and engagement with the NHS. So all of us have a reasonably clear, whether how accurate of course is another matter, but we have a reasonably clear idea of what it is that the NHS does. Most of us have very little contact with adult social care, and therefore very often have very little understanding of quite how adult social care works. And therefore the purpose of this report, and I say particularly pleased to have Hayley presenting it, is really to give the committee a deeper understanding of what adult social care actually is and how it works and how people engage with us, because it is a very different approach from the NHS. And in a particular contrast that I would draw is that engagement with the NHS very often tends to be episodic. That you have something wrong with you, you go and see a doctor, they do something, they fix you, you go away, and that's it. Engagement with adult social care, once you start to be engaged with adult social care, you are probably going to continue to be engaged with us until the end of your life. And that's gives a very different approach and a very different type of relationship. And so we thought it would be helpful to bring that to the committee's attention. So I'll stop at that point and hand over to Hayley. Hayley.
Thank you, Martin. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm extremely delighted to be here with you today. It's not my first time in the chamber, but it's my first time presenting to you today. So my name's Hayley Eccles. I am the Deputy Director. I'm now on week 6 in the county. And just publicly to say thank you for such a warm welcome to those people that I've come in contact with, who've sent me well wishes or a smile. It's been really felt, and what's lovely is that coming to Lincolnshire, what really attracted me was the values and ethics of the organisation, and I've really felt that since being here, so a big thank you. As Martin said, I'm a qualified social worker. I have been for a number of years, starting out my career as a support worker, working my way up within local authorities as a social worker, team manager, head of service and assistant director. I also take a regional and national role in the work of ADAS for unpaid carers. And I'm really excited to be able to bring that experience and that knowledge to Lincolnshire to help improve the outcomes for people. So thank you very much for the warm welcome. I'm going to talk to you today about the application and eligibility of adult social care and the process for assessment. And within the summary and report, I'll talk a lot about the Care Act, but I think it's important to note that it's not just the Care Act that we work under legislation. We have a number of legislations that we work within, which includes the Equality Act, the Human Rights Act, the Mental Health Act, the Capacity Act. So it's really difficult to navigate your way around all of these legislations whilst improving outcomes for people, which is at the centre of what we do. So just going through the report, so the Care Act, which came into force in 2014, is a piece of legislation that reformed adult social care in England. It came into effect in 2015 and it was replacing and consolidating previous laws and regulations and created a new legal framework. The Care Act has core principles that focus on well-being at the centre of everything that we do. Prevention, information and advice. We have a national eligibility criteria, so it's really clear around when people have got Care Act eligible needs and haven't. It also incorporates personal budgets, direct payments, and really importantly, adult safeguarding. So how we safeguard the most vulnerable adults in our community. The Care Act places a duty on councils. So it's not optional for us. It's not an opt-in or opt-out. There's a duty around the legislation. And as Martin said, CQC will be assessing how well we meet that duty when they come to assess us. And the Care Act also looks at how we provide information and advice, and it must be accessible to everybody. So this means that local authorities must make adjustments for disabled people, and we must provide information in a variety of formats. So, for example, Braille, large print, and make sure that we don't digitally exclude people who haven't got access to the internet or that sort of information. And this must be done under the Equality Act, so that's another piece of legislation that we have to work within as well. It must be appropriate to the entire population and not just those who have been assessed as having eligible needs. For those people that we haven't been in contact with, we need to make sure that we've got information and advice accessible so they know who to contact, who to go to, where to go for support. And this is a crucial element of the Care Act's preventative approach. We want people to be as independent and maximise that independence for as long as possible. And there is a wealth of community resources available to people as well as adult social care. So we want to maximise that opportunity. The service is intended to help people to plan for their future needs with their families and to prevent or delay the development of more serious issues. And I think that point is really important, that we can't delay meeting people's needs. It's really important that we act in a proactive and preventative way. Local authorities are expected to work with other organisations such as the NHS, the ICB, the voluntary sector, and people, Lincolnshire people, about co-producing, working with people, carers and their families to ensure that we have a comprehensive and joined up service. Under Section 4 of the Care Act, and there's 5 distinct parts in the Care Act, so there's care and support, care standards, health and social care, and general provisions. But within Section 4 of that, the Council must establish and maintain a service that provides people in their area with information and advice. This should include the adult social care system on how the system works in their area, how to make a request for an adult social care assessment, the eligibility criteria and the review process. So as Martin talked about, when we assess somebody for care and support needs, we don't just assess them once and say, okay, that's it forever now. You know, we've been able to meet our needs. People change, things happen, people grow, people might get better if they've just come out of hospital, or actually they may have a disability that is lifelong, which sees their needs change. So it's about constant engagement and constant reviewing, linking in with people, listening to people to get an understanding of how they can support themselves, how we can direct them to support, and what we can do to enable people to be as independent in their communities for as long as possible. The service is so it's not just for those, adult social care isn't just for people that we're working with, it's for the entire population. So for people to understand where to go to if their mum or dad needs support, their brother and sister if they're coming out of hospital. So we need to make sure that it's accessible for everybody. And this is a crucial element of the Care Act's preventative approach. Information and advice should be available for those which includes details of reablement, residential care, community-based services and voluntary support, and guidance should be available to tell people how to access that, and not just on the internet, because a lot of our older population don't have access to that, so making sure that we're linking in with people. And that includes people who are self-funding care. So for some individuals, they may be Care Act eligible, but they may be self-funding that care. That doesn't mean they're not, they don't have access to a Care Act assessment. The duty still remains. All councils must provide information and advice how to raise concerns about a safety or well-being of an adult who has care and support needs. You'll be aware of that from a children's perspective as well. But safeguarding adults and children is our number one responsibility as the council. The assessment process in how councils identify a person's needs and determine if they're eligible for care and support. It involves discussions with individuals. So we don't just do to people. We don't go in and tell people what they should have, what they should need. It's a collaborative approach that we work with people and their families to understand their life and how we can make sure that they maximise their independence, and we can support them with their needs to be able to do that. And we from that discussion of understanding what that person's needs are, we can determine whether they're eligible under the Care Act or not. If they are eligible under the Care Act, we then go through the support planning process. If they're not, it doesn't mean that we then say, okay, it's not for us, and we move on. We make sure that we sign people to the right services, and we give them information and advice of where they can go to, all their family's information, advice, and where they can go to get their needs met. And if somebody hasn't got a family member or a friend or a trusted individual, we will appoint one in terms of an independent advocate, because it's really important that the person's voice is heard within that process. So having somebody to speak up for them is a core part of our principles and what we do. The Care Act assessment process, the discussion is usually conducted by a social worker or another professional in a variety of settings. So this could be in the person's own home, it could be that they're in a hospital, it could be that they're in a care home or a residential setting, it could be that they're in prison. So it's a number of different settings that we will go and assess a person's needs. And what we want to do is also understand what are the person's strengths. What works really well for that person? What is the strengths within their life? What are the strengths in terms of their support, and how can we maximise that? So we want to understand what's already in place and have a really good understanding of the risks and how we can minimise those. We'll also analyse how the individual's needs affect their ability to achieve outcomes, and how we can work with that individual and their families to empower them to have more choice and control over their lives. And to be eligible for support, and this is really difficult because it can be quite blurred in terms of the interpretation. They must be unable to meet two or more outcomes as a result of their needs, and they must be a result of a physical or mental impairment or an illness. And because of this, it must have a significant impact on their well-being. And within the Care Act, it talks about well-being a lot, and it's really central to the legislation and the work that we do. And we have a statutory duty to promote well-being of an individual when exercising our social care statutory duties. And the council must consider the cumulative effect of a person's needs on their well-being. So we're not just looking at the disability by itself or the challenges. We've got to look at it from a holistic perspective around the person's life. And what does that holistic perspective have an impact on their well-being? And the well-being can broadly be described as personal dignity, physical, emotional and mental health, protection from abuse and neglect, control by the individual, how much control do they have over their day-to-day life, social and economic well-being, and family and personal relationships, sustainability of living accommodation. So we know homes are really important to everybody, aren't they? It's a really important part of our well-being. And to live in a safe and warm and supportive environment is really important, that we look at people's homes and their communities. And the individual contribution to society. So how much are people involved in their communities? How do they feel valued by their communities? How much access do they have to their communities? And councils apply a national eligibility criteria in line with the Care Act to determine if an adult with care and support needs is eligible for services. The assessment process is person-centred, so it's not a one-size-fits-all, because all of us are very different. So the assessment needs to be very different, and we need to make reasonable adjustments to meet all of our population. So, for example, people with learning disability and autism will not have the same experience with an assessment as somebody who is an older person in a care home. It needs to be tailored towards that individual. Following the assessment, the local authority determines with the person if their needs meet the eligibility criteria, and the individual is then given a written record of the outcome of that, and that is in the form of the Care Act assessment. So if we're completing assessments with people, it's really important that they have sight of that. It's not secret, it's something that we're doing with people, and it should describe really accurately and really personally to that person what are their needs, what are the challenges, and what can we do together to support them? How can we direct them to the right services to be able to meet their needs? And if they are eligible, the local authority works with the person to create a care and support plan. So if somebody is eligible under the Care Act, that doesn't necessarily mean that will lead to commissioned services. So somebody can have care and support needs, but may have somebody that they live with who's an unpaid carer, who's able to meet that need as well. So it doesn't always, it's not as always as clear cut as being eligible means that we commission services. It's about meeting that person's needs in the most person-centred way. Where needs are identified, the first approach should always be the least restrictive. So how can we make sure that that person has the least amount of restrictions and have the most autonomy over their lives? So for example, you may have heard the term one-to-one support. One-to-one support means a person with you all of the time, day and night, all of the time, to make sure that you're safe. And whilst that is needed in some cases, it's also incredibly restrictive on the person's liberty. So making sure that that is reasonable and it's proportionate and that it's meeting the person's needs, and where possible, we're always looking at least restrictive services to make sure that we can keep people safe whilst promoting their dignity and making sure they have autonomy. It should always be maximising the person's independence. So enabling the person to do as much as they can for themselves, reducing dependencies. We don't want people to be dependent on paid services. We want to build people's skills, connect them to the communities, enable them to be as independent as possible in their own homes, in their own communities, doing the things that they love with the people that love them. So making sure that we can maximise that. And in some cases, we then commission support to be able to meet the person's needs. And they can be, as I've talked about, it can be in a number of different ways we can commission support. So we can, or deliver support, and that can be signposting to relevant services and other professionals to get ongoing support, community and voluntary services, equipment. So if you think about people coming out of hospital or people who've got mobility needs, a piece of equipment and assistive technology, or it could be care support. So for example, a carer going in to meet somebody's needs. So adult social care has a duty, so we have to ensure that it's reasonable, proportionate and least restrictive to and in the person's best interest. And it mustn't be overly restrictive or impinge on the individual's human rights. So the focus is on meeting outcomes for the person. So what is it that we want to achieve? How are we meeting the outcome? And is it in the person's best interest? And maximising their independence. Part of that, as I talked about in the earlier part, is assessing the person's mental capacity as well. Do they understand? Can they consent? Can we work with the person to be able to meet the identified needs? Adult social care, and I know, Martin, you spoke about this a lot, is a means-tested service. And I think when we think about the NHS, sometimes people can get confused with that if they don't understand adult social care, is that it's not always free. It's means tested on a person's savings, how much they earn, which means that we will undertake a financial assessment with that individual as part of that process. And as such, we may determine through that process that someone should contribute towards the cost of their care. This includes social security benefits, savings or any estates that people may have. And this forms of, and it's really important because the money that is contributed forms part of the council's income generation. The current financial threshold is £23,250, and this figure isn't set up just by us. It's set up nationally by the Department of Health and Social Care and has remained fixed in cash terms since 2010. So this isn't new, it's something, but I think it's something that people aren't always aware of when they refer people in or when people come to access support. So it's really important that we provide the information and advice to enable people to have transparency around that as well. Had it been uprated for inflation, it would have been in the region of 36,000. And for a person with funds over this threshold, they're what we class as self-funders, so they fund all of their own care until they become below threshold. Any person receiving care and support will complete a financial assessment to determine their contribution. And having considered the minimum income guarantee for 25-26, the rate has been set at £30.65 per week by the Department of Health and Social Care. And again, this is a national minimum, as the local authorities have the power to set higher figures if they wish. Hence, even those on benefits will be assessed on how much they can contribute towards their care. In the financial year of 24-25, the amount of contribution required was 63 million, of which 49.3 was received. And the gap in income is due to a number of issues. For example, court of protection. So when people have lasting power of attorney or they don't have capacity over their money. Probate and property debt through deferred payments. So this means that the total sum cannot be guaranteed in the same 12 months, and some people we have to wait until their homes are sold, of which the council then can recoup their funds. So as we've talked about, even if the person is not eligible for support, the council still have a duty to provide written information and advice on what can be done to meet or reduce their needs and to prevent or delay the development of future needs. And that's a core part of the Care Act. So during the 12 months between the 1st of July 2024 and the 30th of June 25, Lincolnshire County Council received 61,611 total requests for support, with the highest demand being for physical support with personal care. And we track this data year on, year out to have a look at who's coming to adult social care, what are the age groups, what are the demographics, so we can really understand our population. So more than half the total number of requests were from individuals aged 75 or over, with the largest proportion of people requesting support from females aged 75 to 84, which is compared to 7,751 males in the same age. However, although relatively few requests were received from individuals aged under 45, these individuals tend to remain within the adult social care system for much longer, and we're finding that people have much complex needs, much younger now, which means that they're with adult social care. So if you think of people coming in at 75 till the end of their life, and that period of time, for individuals may come in at 45, 35 and stay with adult social care for the duration. Some individuals come into adult social care at the age of 18 when they're going through the transition and stay with us until the end of their lives as well. Within the same period, there were a total of 45,873 assessments completed, which included 33,654 short-term assessments, 6,024 long-term assessments and 6,195 financial assessments, and individuals may have received different assessments as their needs developed. So we've talked there about Care Act assessments, short-term assessment, long-term assessments. The different divergence within the work that we do also includes things like Mental Health Act assessments, capacity assessments, best interest assessments, all of which are time and decision specific. So there's a wealth of work that we do with people as they go through their adult lives to make sure that the support that we're providing reduces risk, meets people's needs, is least restrictive, proportionate, and most importantly in their best interests. To ensure we have sustainable adult social care services, so not just for the next 5 years, 10 years, but the next 15 and 20 years, it's really important that we can make sure that we're working towards a sustainable adult social care services that meets people's needs in a strength-based way with a least restrictive approach, focusing on enablement, maximising independence and reducing dependencies, and keeping people in their own homes, in their own communities for as long as we possibly can. I think it's fair to say that historically the services tended to be somewhat risk averse. So protecting people, ensuring that we meet people's needs by over supporting people and maybe not promoting positive risk taking. And we all take risks within our lives, don't we? Every single day. So positive risk taking, enabling people to try things for themselves. We can't always eliminate all risks in all situations, but what we can do is risk mitigate. So putting the support around people that's least restrictive and proportionate to manage risk in the best way possible, and to enable that person to manage their own risks, as you or I do in our lives as well. But because we have been somewhat risk averse, this has resulted in over-reliance on adult social care services, and I think you can see that with some of the numbers within the report. This has had a significant impact on the budget position and the current demand that we're seeing within adult social care services, not just in Lincolnshire, but nationally as well. This will require a system and cultural shift with the population and with the organisation to change some of that culture, to make sure that we can continue to be a sustainable service to meet people's needs. And we can do that by working with partners and stakeholders to meet needs in a different way and keep people in their own homes for longer, maximising their well-being and minimising risks. However, there are signs of a positive shift in culture with the implementation of our initial conversations and our adult social care strategy and our new target operating model that looks to meet people's needs in the least restrictive way. Between the 1st of October 2024 and the 30th of June, the number of assessments that converted to provide a formal service reduced from 28.4% to 21.9%. And we've identified that in a chart that's not very well visible to you, but if you do want to see that, I can send you a PDF a copy of that. What that means is the people coming to us and requesting support is going up, but we're able to direct people to the right services to make sure they're getting the proportionate service, and where we're able to prevent and delay any increased need. So given the evidence that prescribing more care than is required can lead to people becoming more dependent on care, causing their independence and health to decline, and that social care is means tested, so that people can have to make a contribution to their care, ensuring we prescribe the care that is proportionate, and that really we need to be meeting those high priority cases, those high priority needs for people. A specific area for focus for adult social care is direct payments, and direct payments are used to purchase services that meet individuals' assessed need as outlined in the Care Act. Direct payments are really good because they enable flexibility for individuals to employ personal assistants, to purchase services or access other support options, allowing greater flexibility, choice and control and personalisation in order to meet their needs in a more effective and efficient way. National evidence is clear that an association between improved well-being and outcomes and lower cost of care and the use of direct payments. However, direct payments are not for everybody, and it's really important that the process is well managed and overseen, because the person then becomes the employer. So making sure that the person has capacity to understand and manage that and manage those funds is really important. In Lincolnshire, direct payment currently is forecasting a £1.9 million pressure for the council, and the number of individuals being prescribed a direct payment does appear to be increasing in 2025-26, alongside the average package of care costs, which is expected to be higher than the forecast. This highlights that more people are accessing direct payments, with increasing hours being prescribed. And whilst personalisation is positive and a core part of the Care Act, this also highlights an over-reliance on meter needs via a direct payment. And this could be better met in a different way. We've also got to think about the impact on carers and making sure that we can support carers as well. This can include, so meeting needs in a different way can include community and voluntary services, care technology, equipment and other services as well. And there's a robust work plan in place to review and respond to the current pressures within adult social care to ensure that the use of direct payments is effective and efficient in utilising the council's resources, whilst we have a holistic view of the individual in managing risks and meeting need. I wanted to talk quickly around the Equality Act. So under section 149 of the Equality Act, the council must exercising its function have due regard to eliminating discrimination, harassment, victimisation and other conduct that is prohibited under the Act, and advance equity, equality of opportunity for persons who share a relevant protective characteristic and persons who do not share it, and foster good relationships between persons who share a relevant protective characteristics and persons, that was in there too, who do not share it. So when we talk about protective characteristics, we talk about age, disability, gender reassignment, pregnancy and maternity, race and religion, sexual and sexual orientation. And we have to make sure that when we're meeting people's needs, we don't discriminate against anybody who has a protected characteristic, and we minimise any disadvantages that are in place to enable people to have access to services within the council and the Care Act. And this duty cannot be delegated and must be discharged by the decision maker. And that decision maker is the council in our statutory duty. And we need to make sure if there's a risk of adverse impact that it's identified and considered, and that measures must be in place to ensure that we minimise the impact of the process. And that's it. So I'm sorry, I feel like I've talked at you for such a long time. But it's really complicated to get an understanding, and I can't describe the Care Act and adult social care in one report, but I hope it does give you a flavour of some of the work that we do, how the eligibility criteria works, how we don't just work with the people within the service, but we access all of our people in all of our populations, and that people are, and this is the most important thing, people are at the heart of everything that we do. They're at the heart of their own decision making, they're at the heart of our work that we do. And we're not doing this to people, we're working with people, their communities and their families, to make sure that people have long, independent, fulfilled lives in the communities, doing things that they love. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin, for the introduction, and Hayley, thank you for a very comprehensive report. I've learnt a lot, so thank you. I really do mean that. Thank you so much. And now move on, and I would like to invite members of the committee to make any relevant statements and questions. Councillor Cullen, do we have any speakers? Councillor Reeve.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Hayley, for that comprehensive report. I do welcome the increase in the number of direct payments as places people in charge of their own care. But I'd just like to ask, why do you think there's been a significant increase in those number of people claiming direct payments? And are these payments being spent wisely, and are they able to get value for money from those payments?
Thank you. That's a really good question, and one as part of the work that we're asking ourselves. And I think it's really important. Direct payments are really positive, and we do really well nationally and regionally in the number of people that take up direct payments. I think, and Martin may want to come in, as some of the reasons why direct payments are going up, or the hours are going up, is because that we're finding people's needs are becoming more complex, and they're requiring more support. And as people's needs become more complex, we're looking at ways in which we can provide that. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, because life isn't static. So we do see those variables in place. And we also know that people are coming out of hospital in far more acute situations now than wherever before. So the hospitals are really struggling. And with the pressures, we're supporting hospital discharge. So that means that probably 5 years ago, the people that we're seeing coming out of hospital probably would have still been in hospital. So we're supporting people who are more acutely unwell in the communities whilst they recover from that. So I think that's part of it. I think complex needs is part of what we're seeing. But also, given our ageing population, people's needs are increasing. We also know that people are living with poorer health for longer. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all to why. I think it's a combination of things. In terms of if people are spending it wisely, there is a robust audit process that's in place on an annual basis where we audit accounts for people who have direct payments in terms of what that spend is being spent on, to make sure that we're assured, and any unspent monies within that. So for example, if somebody has a direct payment and they go into hospital for 4 weeks, those 4 weeks worth of monies that aren't spent are then recouped back into the council, because they wouldn't just be theirs to keep them. I don't know if you want to answer.
Yeah, if I can just pick up a couple of points, just building on the point that Hayley's been making about audit. There's always a bit of a balance to get in terms of direct payment, of on the one hand being really clear what it is someone is spending the money on, that it is appropriate, but on the other hand actually giving them the flexibility to be a bit variable about what they spend it on. Because if we say, well, here's a direct payment and you have to spend every penny of it on the things that we're telling you to spend it on, well, what's the point of the direct payment? They might as well have a managed budget. So that inevitably there's a degree of flexibility, but we have a team of people who do go through, as Hayley has said, go through the accounts and check that things are being spent appropriately, and we do recoup money that isn't required. And we're doing work to make sure that we minimise the amount that needs to be recouped, because we're only giving people the amount that they need. In terms of the increase in demand, I mean, exactly as Hayley has said, one of the things that is really striking over recent decades is the incredible success of the NHS in keeping people alive. There are tens of thousands of Lincolnshire residents who are alive today who would not have been alive with those conditions a few years ago because of advances in healthcare. And that is, I think, one of the major achievements of our modern society. Obviously, it's not simply limited to the UK. Many developed countries have that. One of the consequences, however, is that largely we are living a lot longer, but we are living a lot longer in poor health. And so we've increased life expectancy, but we haven't greatly increased healthy life expectancy. Effectively, what we've done is we've increased unhealthy life expectancy. And so we have more people with more serious conditions alive for longer. And as I say, in many ways, I regard that as an incredible success. Human life is incredibly precious, and we are achieving, great extension of that. But one of the things that that does mean is that there are a lot more people who are reliant on care, both the health service and adult social care, and therefore one of the things we're seeing is more demand on direct payments as other areas, because we just have more people who are sicker, who have more complex needs.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Hayley, and thank you, Councillor Reeve. Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask, on page 13, the report refers to the means tested threshold of £23,250. This hasn't changed since 2010. So in real terms with inflation, we're looking at a shortfall of £12,750. Can you tell me, what is the latest government position on reviewing this threshold?
You'll be aware that for a number of years, governments have been looking to introduce a cap on care contributions. So there was a commission run around about the same time as the Care Act by the Dilnot Commission, which essentially said there should be a cap of how much people should pay, and effectively government has repeatedly said that they are going to introduce that, and then have stepped back because of the complexity, the managerial complexity of keeping a care account for everyone, and then also the cost, because in effect that would be a billions of pounds shift in cost from individuals to, well, ultimately to local authorities and the taxpayer. And repeatedly government has sort of walked up the hill and looked at that and said, oh, actually maybe not, and stepped back again. And one of the consequences of that has been that because all of the thresholds would essentially be overtaken by that process, therefore there's been no work done about the thresholds. They've just stayed as they are. And indeed, for about a decade, the minimum income guarantee, so that's the amount of money that we leave you with after we've taken a financial contribution, that was frozen for a good decade as well. It's only in the last few years that it started to be uprated. So at present, the current government inherited a commitment that Dilnot would be implemented, but all of the funding that had been allocated for it had been allocated elsewhere. So there was no funding available. So the government has paused that, the current government has paused that, and effectively this is one of the issues that Dame Louise Casey will be looking at in her review. She's just about started that review. She's still been asked to provide an interim report next year and a full report in 2028. Unfortunately, because of her reputation as a fixer, she does repeatedly get called upon to do other things, and therefore, although she was supposed to be starting work on this at the beginning of April, I think she has barely started work on it yet because of other things. So essentially, the issue of contributions and thresholds is awaiting her report, which will be due, as I say, in 2.5 years or so. So in the meantime, the existing system continues. I don't think there's any suggestion by government that they are intending to uprate the 23,250. They have been uprating the MIG by inflation for the last 3 years, I think it is. So essentially, the arrangement as it is now, I don't think will change for at least the next 3 years. And then if Baroness Casey does make significant recommendations, that would be almost certainly requiring primary legislation, which would take a year or two to get through the next Parliament. So realistically, I don't think anything is going to change for at least the next 5 or 6 years.
No,
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Councillor Bean. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. Don't look like that. First of all, welcome, Hayley. Welcome to the authority. And I think it's going to be really useful to have someone who's got social work experience actually as part of the team, because a broad range of experience is always helpful, isn't it? I was really pleased to hear that what you said about people being at the heart of what we do, because we hear an awful lot of talk about, oh, people should help themselves, but these services focus on the people who actually can't help themselves, and surely that's the mark of a decent society, that we look after our vulnerable. We hear a lot of talk about cost as well, and I think there's this idea that, you know, people need to pay more. My mother was in a care home. She passed away a couple of years ago now, but she was in a care home for just 15 months, and we only paid the top up. She had dementia, and just the top up for 15 months was £36,000. So the very idea that people aren't paying for it. And my mother was a teacher. She paid taxes all of her life, you know, so people are paying for this care. So I think we need to be really clear where we are. I think as well, I think reform of how we pay for social care, that's been such a thing for so many years, hasn't it? And I think the real answer, it is the same as financing of the NHS. It needs to come out of the political arena, of any political arena, and there needs to be some sort of cross-party look at healthcare and at social care. This is how we're going to finance it. And to be honest, I'm probably as horrified as anyone else that it's going to take 5 or 6 years for anything to change, because I think at the moment it is massively expensive, and I'm not sure it's really working for anyone. But that's me off my soapbox, but welcome to the authority, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Do we have any more questions? Councillor Redfern.
Hello, thank you, Chair, and welcome, Hayley. You referred to, in your reports here, on page 15, that the conversion rate was gone from 28.4 down to 21.9. Is that the lowest we can go, or is that an acceptable amount? Can we go lower than that?
Thank you. It depends. So if we're putting, there isn't, it depends on people's needs. And I think taking the essence of putting someone at the centre of that, we can't predict what that person's needs are. So if they come to us and we go through the processes as we've talked about, and have they got capacity? Can we meet their needs in a different way? What are their strengths? Can we meet, you know, can we look at equipment, assistive tech, enabling people? But ultimately, if we can divert and support people in a different way, that's what we should be doing, and we should be promoting that. But there will always be people that need our support. So I would feel less comfortable saying actually we can go lower than that. What we can try and do is build on early help, build on people accessing enablement and equipment, and building on strength base. But I don't think we can predict what people's needs would be. So I know I've not quite answered your question. Martin,
Yeah, if I come in, so this is one of those areas where it's really important to know the number, and for us to be able to understand why we are at a particular rate. But it's one of those areas where higher or lower isn't necessarily better, because we're in a sense we'll be attacking it at both ends. So you could have a situation where our information, advice and guidance offer is really, really effective, much more effective than it is now, and therefore people were finding that so helpful that fewer people were coming were approaching us, and therefore we were doing fewer assessments. We're only doing assessments on people who really, really did need the care. And in that situation, you might well find that the percentage of assessments that led to formal care might actually go up, because you were having fewer people approaching us because we had been able to divert them to other alternatives. Conversely, you could have a situation where we have worked very closely with partners in the community to develop a wider range of support services that people can access not through social care but can access directly. And so we might do assessments and say, well, actually, yes, potentially you have got a care need which would be eligible, but remember it's a means tested service. So if you came and had that formal care, it would cost you this. But actually, you can go to this voluntary sector organisation, and they can provide a service which will meet your needs, but will actually be cheaper for you. And therefore, the individual may choose to go there, and therefore that would reduce the percentage. So for me, it's about the knowing where we are and having a clear narrative and understanding of where we are, rather than it being a particular figure. It's a good example of the danger of targets, because in a sense, if the council were to say, right, we want that percentage to go down, I could very easily make that percentage go down by simply doing more assessments. Or if the council said we wanted the percentage to go up, then I could focus on the information, advice and guidance, and therefore have fewer people having assessments, and therefore make the percentage. So I can, in a sense, I can manipulate it either way, but the key thing is understanding why we're there, and are we doing things in the way that gives the best outcome for Lincolnshire people, and that's the key factor.
Thank you for the answer. Very, very good report. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Hayley. And thank you, Councillor Redfern. I believe we've got Councillor Woolley now.
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome, Hayley. Nice to meet you. Can you tell me if direct payments drives up the quality of the offers that are available in a local area?
Thank you, and thank you for the welcome. All services should be high quality. I think direct payments can be more personalised because the person is directing that service and is the employer, and can use more flexibility in a way to promote their well-being whilst meeting their needs. Within the review process, so the ongoing process, as part of the annual review, we would be looking at the quality of that service and whether it is high standards or not. So a supportive arm in supporting the individual with that. Whether it's more or less, I think all services should be high quality. I think it gives greater choice and control, flexibility and personalisation. But I wouldn't say that it's any more or less quality than any of the other services.
Can I just pick up and build a bit on what Hayley's been saying? So we know that choice and control improves the experience of the individual and improves their outcomes. So people tend to, if someone feels more in control of their life, that generally means that they will have a better quality of life and therefore need less care. It is a positive cycle. And also, if someone is paying for the care themselves, even if they're using council money to pay for it, then the customer perspective to an extent can come in, and people are perhaps a bit more willing to make comment and to press for the quality. So all of that should push the quality up. There's also an element that one of the key things that can make direct payments really successful is, as Hayley has been saying, that it makes the individual the employer. So generally, if someone is simply buying a service from a care company, we're increasingly saying, well, what's the benefit of the direct payment? Because actually we can get a better rate, and we can have a more effective contract management with the care company if it's one of the established care companies than an individual can on their own. But if they're using that to buy a personal assistant, if they're directly employing an individual, that can have a really dramatic impact, because both employing an individual is cheaper than buying a company to employ an individual, but also you get that personal relationship, which can often be very different. And therefore, what's been found in many authorities is where there's been a growth in personal assistance, that actually that can have a really quite striking impact on positive quality of service. And incidentally, it can also have a really good impact on the employment market, because it can bring people into the labour force who might not be particularly comfortable working for a care company, but who can have, as a carer, can have a fantastic quality of life working with an individual. And so Somerset is an example from a few years ago where they were really struggling to employ people, to recruit people into care companies, and they had a big push in promoting personal assistance, and they brought literally hundreds, possibly even thousands of people into the care provision who hadn't been there before, and that was a really significant positive impact on the quality of care.
Thank you, Martin and Hayley, and Councillor Woolley. Thank you. Councillor Cullen.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to make a personal thanks to Hayley for such a great presentation, and I can tell that she's going to be a great asset to the adult care and social services. Thank you very, very much. In the last 6 weeks of my son's life, he was found eligible for care. And I can personally, from personal account, as I couldn't no longer manage the one-on-one care that I was providing him with, attest to the great service that the adult care provides in Lincolnshire. So I just want to thank you and welcome, and I can tell that you're going to be a great asset. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cullen. Is there any more questions? I shall just ask a quick question, if that's okay, Martin. It's for self-funding. If somebody runs out of money and they've already been self-funding, and the family are asked to cover the shortfall, do assessors consider the financial impacts on family, especially if there's delays? Thank you.
Really good question and very appropriate. So although the minimum threshold, the capital threshold has stayed at 23,250 for 15 years now, we are seeing an increasing number of people who are reaching that threshold, who are exhausting their resources, and it's in the region of something over 300 people a year. So it's not a small number of people. So the threshold applies to the individual. So if an individual reaches a stage where their assets are below the level, then the council has a statutory duty to meet the costs. That still means they may contribute. So a fairly common scenario is someone has assets. They may have started with 50, 100,000 of assets. They've used those assets to pay the full cost of their care. They're now below 23,250. So they're eligible for council-funded care. But of course, then we will look at their pension or their other social security benefits, and they will still make a contribution. So almost everyone makes some kind of contribution to their care. And I think it's really important for us always to understand that when we say that adult social care is a means-tested service, it really is, and people are. Most people will be making some kind of contribution. But if the individual falls below the threshold, we'll do a financial assessment of the individual and work out to what extent the council should be funding their care, or they should themselves be making a contribution. Family contributions only kick in if there is a deliberate choice that that the individual should be in care which is more expensive than the care that the council would fund. So where this often kicks in is we would say for an individual, you need to be in residential care. We can find you a care home at the rate that we would choose to pay. And the family or the individual say, well, that's okay, but actually I'd like to go to that care home which charges, and the cost is £200 a week more than the council is prepared to pay. And the Care Act gives people a right to do that, but then they or their family have to pay the difference. And it's only in that situation where there has been a conscious choice by the individual or the family to go to a placement which is more expensive than a placement that the council could buy for them, which would meet their needs. Only then does there need to be a contribution from the family. Now, we do find that with self-funders who've depleted their resources, that they chose to move, they chose as a self-funder to move into a particular care home which charged a certain amount, which may well be more than the council would have paid. What we would normally do is then go to the care home and say, well, this person has depleted their assets. We would like to pay you this amount, and we can find a placement that pays that we can pay that amount for. Would you lower your fee so that we pay you the council rate. And some providers will say, yes, that's fine, and some will say no. And in that situation, we then have to make a judgment as to whether moving the individual to a less expensive care home would be detrimental to their well-being, because we have to put the individual's well-being first. So if the conclusion is that actually it would be detrimental to their well-being to move them, then the council has to pay the higher rate. And if the conclusion is that no, it wouldn't be detrimental, then it is up to the family either to pay the additional or else we will move them. And I'm aware that comes across as a bit harsh, but this is public money that we're dealing with, and we should be making sure that people get the care that they need. But when the public purse is paying for it, then the public purse should get good value for it.
Thank you, Martin. Councillor Lee?
Yeah, I just wanted to come back because that's a really good point that you've made. My mum went into a care home and it didn't have a swimming pool and like 5 stars. It was just that it specialised in people with dementia, and my mum had quite acute dementia by the time she was a resident there. And they promised me, because her money started to run out, she had so much money and she had a house, but it started going down at quite an alarming rate. But they said to me that they wouldn't move it because I was worried about what the impact would be on someone, because they get confused so easily. So I have to say 2 things. LCC were really good. They didn't bill us for anything until after my mum had died and we sold her house, and we settled with them then. But I would come back with the greatest of respect about your comment on public money, because people like my mum worked all their lives and paid taxes for 50 years. So actually they put something into that public money. So I would argue that they've got a right to get something out of it as well, because I think sometimes that's what's missing from some of these discussions that we're having at the moment. We're talking a lot about we've got to watch the pennies at the moment and make savings, and I get that, I'm not disputing that, but people have contributed for many years. The contributions didn't start on the 1st of May of this year. They go back a lot further than that. So, you know, it is a double-edged thing, but I think that was a really good comment. Thank you. A question.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Right, I'm assuming there's no more questions. Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions and comments. This now concludes the discussion on this item. I suggest that the information presented be noted and officers be thanked for their presentation. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Reeve. We will now vote. All in favour, please show. Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. That is agreed. Agenda item 6, Adult Care and Public Health Scrutiny Work Programme. This is the last item on today's agenda, and the report can be found on pages 17 to 20 of the agenda pack. This item enables the committee to comment on the content of its works programme. The report will be presented by Simon Evans, Scrutiny Officer. Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll take the committee straight to pages 18 onwards, where the list of items is set out. No changes to the 5 items listed for the 22nd of October. On the 3rd of December, the item to come off the agenda is as a result of the Executive Director's announcement about the timing of the CQC. There won't be anything to report to the committee on the 3rd that can be perhaps shared in the public domain. The next meeting on the 28th of January, following the Executive Council's announcement, is going to have a pre-decision item. The Executive's decision is leading to a consultation, and the outcomes of that consultation and a decision on the future of the service, integrated lifestyle service, will be made on the 3rd of February. So the committee on the 28th of January will need to slot into, there will be a need to slot an item into that meeting. Just jumping back again, there is also a plan on the 3rd of December for this committee to look at the current integrated lifestyle service. So those are the changes to the work programme, not listed on the list, but is the 29th of April. And I think, depending on the outcome of the Care Quality Commission, that might be the date for the outcome of the Care Quality Commission report. Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Simon, for your presentation. I would like to invite members of the committee to make any relevant statements. Councillor Cullen, do we have any? Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. I don't really mean to hog this. Just a question, really. Is the one on the 3rd of December, because there was mention at both OSMB and Executive yesterday, that there'd be a meeting and it would be joint, the Health Scrutiny Committee and this committee, so we could look at the broader impact of this, of the Integrated Lifestyle Service consultation results, proposals, whatever you want to call it. That was the first thing. And then the second thing, on the OSMB report on the 28th, the report on the Integrated Lifestyle Services, when it came to impact and risk analysis, it said not applicable. And I would suggest if those services were to be changed, then impact assessments are absolutely applicable. And can you assure me, please, that it will be a full scrutiny report with risk assessments and impact analysis attached to it, please?
Shall I pick up the point about in terms of impact assessment, the report that goes to the executive on the 3rd of February will have a full impact assessment, and therefore that will be available for the draft that for the version that comes to this committee on the 28th of January.
I meant for the scrutiny on the 3rd of December. Will that have impact analysis and risk assessments?
We haven't written the report at the moment, but essentially that report will be focusing on the current service. So that'll be a report for information, and therefore, because there'll be no proposals for change, there can't be an impact assessment on changes that aren't being proposed. So that will be an information report which will give full information about what the ILS is and what it does and what it achieves.
I think my point was, because we went through this at OSMB, what we needed with this was a full report that detailed the services, because we're not clear which ones there's proposals to cut or change or whatever. We need to know what each of those services does, and we need to know what the risk would be to the population, and that includes via what the impact on the NHS. So we do need risk assessments. We want to know what would happen if those services were to be withdrawn. Not to say that they are being withdrawn, but that's what the consultation's about. So I think that risk analysis and impact assessments are absolutely vital, and I would formally ask for that from my group for the 3rd of December. Thank you.
If I can just go, and I think the intention is that the report on the 3rd of December will identify the impact of each element of the ILS, and therefore, by a process of elimination, if that service wasn't there, you'd be able to work out what the impact would be of it not being there.
I'll settle for that.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Councillor Lee. Do we have any more questions at all? Councillor Bean.
Thank you, Chair. It doesn't relate directly to what we've been talking about today, but I received an email from a concerned relative about difficulty contacting the service. So I'd just like to ask a few questions. I will say I've already forwarded it on to Fiona Burstow, who's looking into it. But this person tried to contact adult services regarding his 90-year-old father, and the only contact information he could find was a phone number. So he tried to phone. He spent all morning trying to phone. He went through recorded messages. He got passed from this pillar to that post and didn't really get anywhere. In the end, he phoned back and he actually got through in the afternoon, and he managed to speak to 2 different people. The first person he spoke to was very polite, told him who he was, told him he was only triaging, passed him on to somebody else who didn't tell him who he was or what his position was. So really what I want to know is, what methods do we currently have in place for people to contact adult services? And also, we need to look at a consistent approach by staff.
So we deliberately encourage people to ring us rather than have an online process. So let me expand that a little bit. So in terms of information, advice and guidance, we encourage people to look online and see what is available. But if people are looking for care, we encourage them to ring and have a conversation, because this is a person-centred service, and therefore speaking to someone is much more effective than just getting details through an online form. the front door, the telephone front door for adult social care is a part of the contract that the council has as a whole with Serco, so that if all of the numbers that you ring for the council, all of them go to the Serco Customer Services Centre, and they have an agreement with the council to run through those and handle those calls. So obviously I can't comment on the individual case that you're mentioning, but it would sound as though the service delivered by Serco under contract to the council in that instance was not up to the standard that would be expected or required, and therefore I can pass that to the team who manage that contract with Serco to raise it with them. But it is these are Serco staff. That's the arrangement that the council's had for many years now.
Thank you, Martin. I'd just say that from the sounds of it, it's an extremely frustrating process. Took him nearly all day to get any kind of answer. Had to listen to recorded messages with multi-option choices, which I don't know about other people, I find extremely irritating. So I think we really need to review the situation, and he was specifically asking why there isn't an email. So he could send his question in and then be contacted by us, rather than spending all day trying to get through to the right person on the phone.
So as I say, we can raise the issue with Serco. The email issue, I've worked in a number of councils which have had email options. Generally what they found is that then it becomes really difficult to ring the person back, and that is actually much simpler to give a phone number for someone to ring us when it's convenient for them. Now clearly it didn't work for this individual, and I don't know what's happened there, and the contract with Serco is such that they should be answering the phone much more quickly than that. So I say I can raise it with the team that manage that contract. But normally what has been found is that if people email in and ask for a phone call back, staff can spend a great deal of time trying to ring people back and not getting through, or not convenient, and it works much better to just say ring this number when it's convenient for you and we'll deal with it. But clearly that didn't work in this instance, and I can only apologise.
Yes, I'd just like to say that obviously in this case the service was unsatisfactory, and with regard to the email, we can always email them back.
Thank you, Councillor Bean. I think we'll stop there. Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Councillor Overton.
Just a point generally, on a general, taking up that. When you ring the council, the message you get is 1 minute 40 seconds. Then you can get through to another department, and then you start again with another message. So one of the problems that the council might like to continue
Can I just stop you there, Councillor Overton? We are on the works programme.
Right, okay. Right, but that is a particular bugbear of me. It does irritate. Thank you.
Maybe we could look at that at the next meeting. Thank you.
And that number should be on the front line. Thank you, on the front page.
Councillor Lee, did you want to comment at all?
I was just going to make that point. We're supposed to be talking about the agenda. If people have got casework issues, then they need to approach the director separately outside of this meeting. Or if we think we want to scrutinise it here, fair enough, stick your hand up and say, can we put this on the agenda? But not under where we are now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. I've got a question, and it's regarding the transition from children to adult services. I was wondering if that should be on the works programme, because I see it's not.
The work programme is at the discretion of the committee, and if you would like an item on it, we can very happily put an item on it. We'd have to see where we can fit it in, but we'll always bring whatever you want to this committee.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, thank you. That concludes the discussion on this item. I move that we note the report and approve existing works programme and detailed in page 17 to 20, and if there's any changes or amendments made, which there have been, including those amendments identified and the additional items highlighted in discussion today. Do we have anybody who dissent? No, thank you. Thank you, that is agreed. That concludes our business for the meeting today. Thank you very much for all your questions and comments, and have a good day. Thank you.